down, power lines are down.
Message of 290 characters follows.
VHF, it's 150 megahertz range, 154. And this service is not, as there's 5 channels in it, it's not widely used. It is really was kind of just intended for anybody to use, but largely I think businesses kind of latched onto it initially as a license-free option for businesses. It gives you a 2-watt output. I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but it gives you 2 watts, so half what CB does. Still one of the better outputs. Its capabilities are going to be limited to a couple of miles, maybe 5 at the max with handheld radios, because it's very line of sight. The curvature of the earth is going to get in the way without a bunch of elevation on one end when you get about 5 miles out. MURS, also being VHF, does not penetrate buildings as well as one of the other radio services we're going to talk about. Because the lower the frequency, the worse your building penetration tends to be. So it's something worth considering there. But MURS is a very popular radio service in certain segments of the survival and preparedness community because of the different radio services that are license-free. It may be the most versatile. It allows you to have an external antenna with no license, just like CB. The benefit is, the external antenna is about 18 inches long for a quarter wave, a bit longer for a higher gain antenna, but still very manageable compared to the length of a CB antenna. You can put a mag mount on top of a car and you can greatly extend your range of trying to use a radio in a car. You can mount one to a tractor or to a UTV. You can put a mast up next to your house, and you can put a antenna on it to gain quite a bit more distance, because as you go up in height, your range increases dramatically. So there are options that MURS offers in order to extend that range license-free that you really don't get in anything else other than CB. So that is something definitely to consider if you have a farm or maybe a larger property, a preparedness retreat area, those sorts of things. As long as you're okay with outside antennas to get the building penetration you need, so you're not dealing with the problems of building penetration. MURS is a great radio service. MURS radios tend to be a little more expensive than FRS radios. They're a little more expensive than FRS radios. They have a bit better range outside, not a ton, but a little bit better range outside. Inside, those things not necessarily as so well. The other thing to consider with MURS is the antenna is larger. So with portability concerns, FRS, the UHF we're going to talk about, the antennas are smaller for more efficient antennas. When you shrink the MURS antenna, it becomes less efficient and your range is penalized because of that. So understand some of the limitations of MURS, but it's still a good radio service. And if you've been in a disaster, if you've been in some of those situations where there's a lot more people around, the FRS band can get kind of clogged up pretty quickly, being with a lot of people trying to find a place to operate. A lot fewer people are using MURS, so generally, there's not as many people around. I'm actually going to dump out of my slideshow for just a second, and we're going to go over here to Amazon for a minute, and we're going to take a look at some MURS radios just to kind of give you guys an idea. There's a lot of companies, generally of Asian import radios, that are made from MURS. The big companies, Motorola, ICOM, those companies, they do make MURS radios. They're typically a couple $100 because they're intended for business use. They're very rugged radios. There are companies that make cheaper ones. there are companies like, B-Tech here and Radioddity, and I kind of like these little Redivus ones. I don't get paid by any of these companies, but the Redivus ones, I like radios, especially if I'm handing out radios. If I'm not giving a radio to a radio person, it's very simple to operate. These don't look like they have a display at all. They just have a channel selector and a volume knob. That makes them very simple to operate. I'm less of a fan of radios like this here with the display on the front, simply because it has the frequency below it. People who are not ham radio operators, people who are not radio people, they don't care what the frequency is. They just want to know what channel to turn their radio to. So there's no point in confusing or adding complications to the operation of a radio by sticking a frequency on it. They don't need that. So that's, those options for MURS radios. Let me get my slideshow back up here and get us back to FRS radios. So if your FRS radio looks like the FRS radio in the picture on my slide, you should probably upgrade it. In the late 2010s, the FCC rewrote the FRS regulations and now allows up to 2 watts on several of the FRS channels. Namely, channels 1 through 7, you can now use 2 watts. And you also can use the GMRS frequencies, which are 15 through 22 with 2 watts license free. Now, the capabilities of these, again, best case scenario, you're going to get a couple, maybe 5 miles in open terrain. Elevation, again, is what matters because the curvature of the earth gets in the way. GMRS, but FRS does penetrate buildings a little bit better. It's a little bit higher in frequency. It has the shorter antenna, can still be an efficient antenna at those frequencies, and they do work reasonably well in those environments. Do understand, again, you have quite a bit of limitation, and because FRS radios vary so widely in quality, make sure you're getting radios that actually do operate at the 2 watt output that they're allowed to operate at on those channels in question, because a lot of radios are still operating on the half of a watt, the 500 milliwatt design of the pre-2018 radios. And, that little bit of extra power does go a long way in getting through buildings. So something to keep in mind there, make sure that, and, there are still some channels on FRS, the channels 8 through 14 that you're only allowed a half watt on. And I know I'm confusing people by throwing out all this stuff. Well, one of the things I want to bring up about this is you will see in disaster zones, you see in the prepping world, there's a lot of people who are using import radios that they can program FRS channels in. Well, one, you're not supposed to do that legally. I'm not going to get into that debate here. I don't care. It's your decision to do what you want to do. But if you don't understand the license and power requirements for each of those, that's where you can cause interference and even if you don't know it, and issues when programming those radios. So, if you're going to do something like that, it's your decision to do that, but also make sure that, you understand what you're doing. Next up is GMRS. Before we get into GMRS, we're going to hop out of my slideshow again for just a second, and I am going to show you guys a couple of, these are some of the Amazon. Again, I'm on Amazon, and Amazon is a good place-ish, I guess. I don't know, to get import radios. You're not going to find as much of the Motorola and other companies. They do have Midland radios. I like, the better the quality, the better, but also understand that, there's a place for inexpensive radios as well. The 77S here, I own actually a few of these. They're a very simple radio. They do not have FRS channels because they only do 2 watts. And they're like I said, overall, for the price, they're kind of hard to beat. They work pretty well, and they're very simple. Again, I like the simple operation if you got to hand a radio to somebody. But there's a lot of different options here. There's a lot of Retevis stuff here. If I just do a GMRS search, you'll see Midland makes a lot. Midland makes a lot of GMRS handheld radios, and FRS handheld radios. So there's a lot of different options here. We're fixing to talk about GMRS. GMRS gets you some more power out of a handheld. And let's go back over to the GMRS.